Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Okay, two huge things. Never leave money on the table. Our guest, Kate Berkey, is going to talk about that. And we're going to be talking about storytelling. I mean, Kate, these are two powerful, powerful things coming together, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And they work together so well.
Well, I am really excited to be learning from you today. And this is just one of those things that we talk about each one of these issues, but a lot of times we don't put them together, right? They're separate. And so this is going to be really a lot of fun. And I'm just delighted that you are here with us today. I want to give a shout out to one of our co-hosts, Sherry Kwam Taylor, because I think she's the one that introduced us and said, hey, you got to get Kate Berkey on the Nonprofit Show because she's got something to say. So that's why we have you here, and we're just delighted. We are also delighted to welcome our returning sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, Crescent Cares, JMT Consulting, and Fundraisers Friday. Again, I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. Hey, Tony Bell and I, and we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, have co-authored the book, The Architecture of Fundraising. It's available on Amazon. It's a great read and a great tool for your team. A better tool right now and here is Kate Berkey. She is a StoryBrand guide for nonprofits. Okay, first of all, let's back up the bus, Kate, and have you explain to us what StoryBrand is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited for this conversation. So let me explain a little bit. So most nonprofits, they're leaving money on the table simply by just not communicating clearly. They're wasting time and resources on messages that are confusing their donors. So what I do is I come in and I help clarify their message through the StoryBrand framework so that they can increase giving and increase impact. So that can look like doing a StoryBrand brand script workshop where a nonprofit actually leaves with a brand script in hand, which I can explain that in a little bit. And sometimes it looks like doing that and helping to implement that brand script. But to put StoryBrand like in a nutshell, very briefly, it was created by Donald Miller years and years ago. He wrote a book called Building a StoryBrand in 2017. And he since wrote other editions, and there's a lot coming out of StoryBrand. But essentially what Donald Miller found is that there was a messaging problem, both in the business world and in the nonprofit world. We just were not communicating clearly. We were putting out messages that were confusing, that maybe our team understood, but literally no one else did. And so what he did is he recognized that our brains, we think in story all the time. There's this stat that we spend about 30% of our lives or our days daydreaming, whether we realize it or not. Mm-hmm. And so he said, what if we took those building blocks of story and used it in our messaging? So not that we're just constantly telling stories, but as we communicate to our customers, our clients, our donors, we're positioning that inside of a story framework. So it's made of 7 different parts. You have a character who wants something, they have a problem, they meet a guide who gives them a plan, calls them to action that results in success and avoids failure. And if you're hearing that and you're thinking like, that's so simple, it is. It is. And every good movie, every good book you've ever read, it comes down to those 7 parts. But in communication and marketing and all of that stuff, it gives us this really incredible framework to position our organizations and our customers, not so much customers in nonprofit, but our donors, the people that we serve, position them as the character and as us as the guide. So they are the hero and we're simply the guide helping them get to where they want to go. So in a nutshell, that's StoryBrand. You could go on and on about it, but that's it in a nutshell.
I love 2 things that jump off the page to me, no pun intended, is it creative writing 101, it's the 7 steps, right? So you're right. It's very basic, but it's sequential in many ways. And they all have to kind of row in the same direction and work. And so I love that you kind of helped us frame this up because I think a lot of times we hear, well, you got to have a good story. You got to tell a story. And we don't really understand what that means, right? And so I love that you just made this a lot more achievable for most of our viewers and listeners. So thank you for that. So now that we kind of understand the lens with which we're looking at things, let's dig in a little bit more and talk about that messaging. We were chatting in the green room. Oh my gosh, how we get this so messed up, even internally within our own groups. And then you layer in the nonprofit board environment. Frankly, I think that's where a lot of these things fall through. So what happens then if we have these confusing messages?
Yeah,
Where does that land
absolutely.
us?
Absolutely. So I think there's one thing that as I was thinking about this conversation, there was one thing that came to mind that I wanted to say first of all. And I think that the idea of communicating clearly, it is such a practice. Like it is something we have to show up every single day and say, I am going to put in the hard work today to communicate clearly. Because Julia, there's so much that lands on your plate. There's so many stressors in life. And there is a lot of times where I'm guilty of this, where I'm like, I just need to get this done. I need to get it done. I need to get it out because this has been on my plate forever and I just have to get it. Like it just needs to be done. And so as we talk about this idea of clear messaging, I think it's just really important to remember that it is going to be a daily practice, but I think that it's a very worthwhile practice because if we choose to continually put out messages, maybe we don't even realize that they're unclear, but those confusing messages that we're putting out, it's confusing our donors, not to be like, it's confusing, so it's confusing, but it is. Donald Miller has this really great line, and he says, if you confuse, you lose. And so as we think about donors, we think about fundraising, all of that, if we're confusing our donors or potential partners who have just stumbled upon us, we've lost them. We have just mere seconds to communicate something very clearly. And if we miss that, we've lost them. And so let's think about maybe you have somebody that's been a part of your organization for years. Like there's so much buy-in. There's going to be a lot of grace, I think, for some of those confusing messages that could come out of your organization. But over time, if we continue to speak in ways that we think are clear but are actually not, I mean, it's going to create hesitation in donors. It's going to create that confusion. Over time, it could erode trust and confidence in your organization if they're like, I don't really understand the impact that I'm having, or I actually don't understand if they need money. I don't know how many times I've gotten something and I'm like, do they need money? I don't really know what they're asking me to do, or if they need something, or what the specific need is. And some of those very basic things, such as call to action, or such as just being really clear about what the need is. Over time, those are things that as an organization, when we're inside it, we can think we're being super clear and we're not. So it's really good to have someone else give you some feedback on that. But just over time, we lose that trust and we lose that confidence. So if you confuse, you lose. I have that up all the time in my mind, or just literally on a whiteboard.
Wow. I mean, super powerful, and absolutely that boils it down. If you confuse, you lose. Brilliant. I'm going to write that down in my notebook when we're done with the show. Because I feel like what you just said, I feel like sometimes with nonprofits, you look around and I'll speak from my community, and you think what a group is doing. But until you, in my case, meet with leadership or volunteer or experience their work, you realize you don't really know what they do, or you were under a different impression. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's nothing quite like that reckoning when you realize like, wait, what? I actually didn't realize. And some of that, some of that, so let's say there's a nonprofit that's working internationally and you actually get to go and see, you get this new perspective of all of the communications that they were putting out, and it helps to like expand the view of what they do, and that ends up being this really beautiful moment of filling out the picture. But then sometimes it's like, wow, what was I missing? Were you just not communicating it clearly? Was I not understanding you? I don't know. And so it creates this like disconnect of, can I trust them? Is there confidence there? Ugh.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're talking about the communication value of connecting donors and potential donors and stakeholders to our missions. How does StoryBrand, using those 7 tenets and that journey, how does it differ with the nonprofit sector, or is it kind of the same? Because it's kind of an interesting aspect. I mean, when you said that, I was thinking about, okay, if you were trying to StoryBrand shampoo versus domestic violence, are the steps the same or are they different?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And it is slightly different.
Okay.
So I've seen StoryBrand work so well in the business world and in the nonprofit world. They do look slightly different. So on a very practical level, the character and what they want, the problems that they have, you as the guide, honestly, those are really similar. And when we're giving them a plan, that can be really similar to the business world. When we're calling people to action, that's when we're like, hey, donors, this is it. This is your moment. Come on in, like give, or, volunteers, this is your moment to shine, come and be involved. But here's why I think StoryBrand works so well for nonprofits. Julia, I'm sure that you even just use this example, shampoo versus domestic violence.
Yeah.
So different, so different. So I think nonprofits, one of the things that we can struggle with is we are trying to solve really big problems. Now, I'm not trying to say that like somebody trying to solve, dandruff in the hair isn't like, I'm saying that's not a worthwhile thing, right? But I'm saying that as nonprofits, we are trying to solve really, really big problems that can feel really difficult to describe. We can sometimes be flying at 10,000 feet and we're like, I don't know how to describe all the things that we do or the ways that it's impacting people's lives or how they're being transformed, right? That can be really difficult to do. I think what StoryBrand helps nonprofits do so well is it says, yep, I get it. It's really, really tough to describe this and to be super clear and to just put it in simple terms, but it forces you to do that. StoryBrand forces you. One of the things that we talk about when I do a workshop with organizations is especially those first 2 areas of a character and what do they want and the problems they have. Those can be so difficult to describe. And the team can start to get a little bit discouraged. They can feel a little bit stuck. And I remind them in those moments, hey, you guys are doing so good. And you guys are doing the hard work that your donors aren't going to. They're not going to do the hard work of saying, I wonder what they mean when, or like, oh, I wonder, what is that? I don't exactly know what that means. And so I try to encourage them with that because that's what StoryBrand does. It forces nonprofits to get super, super clear. Julie, there's an example that I thought of and I would love to share. I think this is something with nonprofits that I see all the time. I promise I'm not picking on a specific organization. I just pulled this one out of thin air because I've seen it and not seen it all at once. But one of the things we talk about in StoryBrand is that every word that we use or every phrase, it carries a cognitive load. So when we see it, every word carries a load of how quickly can somebody understand this, like right away? Like, is it confusing or do they have it? Okay. So let's take, for instance, the phrase, again, I'm not picking on anyone, but empowering human flourishing. I feel like that's a phrase that you could see on any nonprofit. They would love to say something like, we empower human flourishing. And that's one of those phrases that probably a marketing team is like, oh, that's good because it feels good. It makes them feel like, wow, no one else is saying this. And how else do we describe what we do? But if we take that phrase, empower human flourishing, there's only one word that I immediately know, okay, I know what a human is. Obviously, you don't work with animals, right? Like, but even then, I'm kind of confused. Do you work with kids, adults? All humans, right? So there's some struggles there. I mean, if you take the word empower, that's one of those words that we love to use. It feels like a rich word. But if you asked a group of 5 people, hey, what does it mean to empower something? Like practically, what does that look like? You probably get 5 different answers because it's become one of those words that like I don't totally know what that means immediately. My brain doesn't see the word empower and know, oh, got it. I know exactly what you do. And I think the same with the word flourish. I think that's similar to like thrive, which we love to say these words like thrive, flourish. If I have one more client tell me they want to use the word thrive, it's going to be great. But it's one of those words as well that, again, you ask 5 people and they'll give you probably 5 different answers. So on paper, the idea of we empower human flourishing, right? It doesn't feel like it's an unclear message, but it's not clear. It doesn't immediately tell me, I know exactly what you do. And I understand how I can be a part of this. And so that, for instance, then what StoryBrand would do is say, let's actually dig into what does this mean? And let's be super clear. Let's not be boring and just like say it exactly how it is so that we're not being boring, but we are being super, super clear so that people immediately can see it and say, I get it and I'm ready to get involved, or I understand how I can, or I want to learn more. And now you can tell me all the different things you do. So that's a little bit of long of an example. I'm sorry, but that's one of those things that's so important for nonprofits to remember.
Well, it kind of leads me into the next thing I want to talk about, and that is that clear messaging impacts your internal team. I mean, I can kind of see that when you have these nebulous things versus really drilling down, it's hard on the team because it's going to force them to have a reckoning with what it is their mission is it achievable, what their parameters are. It kind of forces the team.
Yeah.
Small to large, depending on who and what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
It's really an interesting thing to really force this parameter, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it was Brene Brown that talks about clear is kind. So thinking about like clear is kind, right? It's kind for your donors, your volunteers. It's kind for your board. It's kind for your team. So the clearer we can be, I mean, we're just even choosing kindness among our own teams. But I think what I've loved is I've seen my clients really embrace this idea of StoryBrand is that it does have an impact on their internal team. Because when I get together and I do a workshop, it's not just with, the marketing team or the communication team. Right. We're having multiple stakeholders at that table so that, first of all, we can get perspectives that we wouldn't normally get, which is so important. But what I always want to leave them with is like, this is not just for your communication team. This is not just for all the external messages. When we come up with your brand script, which is those 7 parts, right? We also talk through, hey, what's your one-liner, which is essentially your elevator pitch. Wow. And that's something that everyone on the team needs. They need to know that so that, like, Julie, I don't know for you, how many times have you been out and somebody says, hey, what do you do again? Or like, you do podcasts, or what do you do? And I don't know for you, I'm sure at this point in your career, you know exactly what you say. But there's so many times where we show up in those spaces and we're like, well, I do. And you fumble through what you do. So if even thinking about the idea of that, if you equip your team with clear messaging, you have just created passionate, because most nonprofit or like people in nonprofits are very passionate and accurate ambassadors. They're accurate when they go to those spaces. They know what they're saying. It's not a script that they're being forced by like corporate. Like it's not that, but it's they actually know and they want to be an ambassador. Most people want to be an ambassador for their organization, and board members, like employees, you have just equipped them to be that exact person that they long to be. And what better gift to give your people than that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just thinking about you're emboldened and to go back to that other word, empowered, to talk about your work and communicate confidence when you have that line. You know, if you're standing in line at the donut shop and somebody engages you or you engage somebody, it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference, I think. I mean, maybe that's just me, but you know, I think you have to arm your people with that sense of this is what we do. It's mission focused. It's communications. It brings people into your circle, into your orbit. Yeah, I'm going to join the team. You know, it has so much. It has so much and value. And so I appreciate you kind of helping us understand how that can become a tool. It's subtle. And I agree with you. You said something really interesting right at the gate, is that it's a practice. It's not a one and done in a conference room over a long weekend. I mean, it's okay, every day we're going to practice this, and we're going to have it become a part of who we are and what we do. And I'm telling you, I see organizations throughout the world that get it right, no matter what their mission is. But when they get it right, you just see how much further ahead they are, whether you agree with their mission or not. Right. But I think that's that powerful of a tool. So
yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. Okay. So we've talked about your internal aspect. You've talked about the process. Share with me what in your experience is working. Like, how are you seeing the StoryBrand messaging in action here and now?
Yeah. Can I tell you a story about when it didn't work?
Yes, you may, because sometimes we learn better from that.
I think so. I think there is a scenario that I experienced in November of last year, and I am still thinking about it because it's just gnawing at my brain constantly. And hopefully, if we have time, I'll share another story as well. But there was a I'm not going to share the name of the nonprofit, but an incredible team. I mean, an international organization, just phenomenal. And had the opportunity. I've already been a supporter of them. They don't need to convince me that what they're doing is important, but I had the opportunity to go actually serve with them at an event. Just an incredible time to like bring together and give people just a hands-on experience. Mm-hmm. So I showed up at this event, right? And there's about 30 to 40 minutes at the start of it where they're, trying to explain what the organization is and what they do and what we'll experience during our volunteer time together. And it was about 30 to 40 minutes too long.
I was going to say, that's a long time.
And it was, the problem is that there was no clear thread. There wasn't, I didn't understand who's the character. What problems do they have? How is this organization truly equipped? What's my role in this? I got thrown a bunch of data. I got thrown a bunch of, information that I don't remember. I don't remember any of it because we don't really remember data as much as we do remember stories and data together. But we need those stories to help at least a thread of one story being told together. And then we can really kind of remember that data as well. So we go through that time. I'm sitting there like, wow, this is taking a long time. Can we just get to the volunteer part? We get to the volunteer part. It's a wonderful time. I have nothing bad to say about this organization and that. No critiques for them in that. At the end, they pulled us together for like 10 to 15 minutes to wrap things up. And the problem was they were trying to wrap it up well, which I totally understand, but they gave us 3 calls to action. And I don't remember any of them.
Oh,
because the first one was confusing. The second one, I thought, no, they're not giving us the second one. And then the third one, I was like, three. I don't know what you want me. I don't know what you want me to do. And so what StoryBrand would do is it would say, hey, let's figure out the thread of what's the story we're trying to tell, be super clear, and then give people one call to action. Let's not give all the options on the table. If we want to leave somebody with one thing, what's the one thing we want to leave them with, instead of confusing them and then they leave with nothing. They don't know what to do because we've confused them that whole time. And so it was one of those moments. I think what they could have done so much better is, the team that came, it was an offsite location far away from headquarters, right? So my guess is their communication team, I'd be so shocked if they hadn't done a lot of that hard work like what you said, in a conference room somewhere.
yeah.
They did the work. They knew what they wanted to say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it trickled down to the person that was going to travel 500 miles away to do this event. But if it had, oh man, the story would be so different. I'd be sitting across from him being like, oh, let me tell you about when it worked, this thing in November. But instead, I'm like, let me tell you about a time I was confused. I didn't understand what they were trying to leave me with. And if we had just clarified some things, given them one call to action, oh man, the story would be so different.
Well, and what's so sad about that is that you showed up. I
Yeah.
mean, you were a potential loyalist to that
Yeah.
cause. And you did all of those things that it takes to show up and be in a mindset that you're going to participate. And
Yep.
then, that talk about leaving money on the table. Really, thank you for sharing that. And as hard as it is to hear, man, I can see where you were. I can see that moment. And it grinds my stomach, actually. Because
Yeah.
how many of us, it's like, oh yeah, we've been there, right?
Yes.
So really shocking. Well, this has been great. I warned you in the green room this was going to go by fast, and it has. Wow, Kate Berkey, really an interesting conversation today. It's going to stay with me for a long time. Kate is a StoryBrand guide for nonprofits, and you can learn more about Kate and her work at kateberkey.com. Again, Kate came to us through one of our co-hosts, Sherry Kwam Taylor, and she was like, Julia, you got to get this gal on the show. She's great. And it has been a fabulous conversation. So definitely check out Kate and communicate with her. We are super fortunate because each and every day in the Nonprofit Show, we have amazing presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Crescent Cares, Third Sector Company, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday, along with JMT Consulting. These are the folks that help us share our stories and are with us each and every day. We've done nearly 1,500 episodes, and most of these folks, they have been with us since day one because they believe in this journey. So we want to make sure that we honor and thank them. Kate, wow, what a great conversation today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Good. Yeah, it's been really interesting, and you've given us, I think, a lot to think about. So thank you very, very much. As we
Absolutely.
end each and every episode, we like to remind ourselves, our viewers, our listeners, even our guests, to stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again.